This is going to be a demo video for a private collector, so I'm not going to say his name, but I just got done with his custom etched staff. I believe this is a one-off saber that he made or had made, and then Pete Sandoval over at Pete's Powder Emporium is the guy who did the etch, and it's an incredible etch on here. But this came to me for an install, and it was a very unique install, right? Like, I had to figure out a way to make this a staff. The only piece that opens up is this pommel area right here, but it's not really a pommel, it's the second emitter, right? So the second emitter comes off right here. So there's no switch holes, there's no sound venting. Sound for this particular customer was not important because he uses this for other things. So I didn't have to drill any sound venting. I did have to put a 12mm hole right here though, and I use an aluminum brass tactile switch from Robert Sotomayor over at Sorok Sabers. So that's what I put in right here. 2-button setup, right? Dual tactile. Bottom switch is the activation, and then the top switch is the auxiliary for this guy. It's installed with a CFX CCSabers LEDs on both sides. And then how we get to the chassis is we want to open up this side right here. So we just take this off. Now, I did not put a retention screw in for the chassis to hold it in place. So this chassis gets held in, there's actually two ways, right? First of all, I made it a tight enough tolerance in here to where it's not going to slide out. You really have to reach in here and pull it out. It comes out, but it's just nice and firm. So you pull this out, it stays in there with a press fit first of all, and then when you put your second blade in here, when you lock this emitter back on, that I'll show you in a second, that also makes sure that everything stays in place. Now, you can use this without the second blade, so this acts as just a pommel piece, but it does help lock everything in, right? So when we put this down, here's what we've got for the chassis. CFX board right here. I used Smuggler's Outpost Switch Pixel PCB set. So you've got this piece right here, and then you're probably not even going to be able to see it in there, but way down in there is a 14-pin piece, and it sits about right here or so. And that stays in, obviously, right? So that is wired up to this blade, or it's wired to this emitter, it's wired to the switches, that stays in place. And then as far as this goes, I took the second emitter, which is right here, and I wired everything also to this Smuggler's Outpost PCB. So both blades are running off this PCB, and then from the PCB I come to the underside of the board, and then your CFX board is right here. It is just a press fit down into the shelf, not glued down or anything. It does have a groove right here for some art tape in the future if you need it, but I don't think you'll ever need it. And I didn't put it on because it's a super tight fit, right? So you've got a 22mm speaker right here. You know, just emphasizing again, the customer was not concerned about sound. So I just gave, it's just enough of a speaker to give some audible cues so that you know what you're doing when the board is on. Other than that, that's its only function, right? So spring size your negative right here next to the board. We'll throw a battery in. You hear that fire up, so that's good. And we'll take this, when we put this in with the battery in, it's tight, right? Very tight, but it goes. And it's also kind of like almost airtight in there too, because it's pushing up against, there's just no air circulating here. You can hear that really well if you yank this chassis out fast. You'll hear a pop just from the air, right? So we'll push this in as far as it goes, and it stops about right there. It stops right past the end of this pommel, and I did, the hilt or the handle piece. I did that on purpose so that you would have just enough to grab onto to pull this out if you needed to. So when it's sticking out like that, we just take our second emitter and we screw it right on. Screw this on all the way. And we'll tighten up the emitter. You can see from the etch patterns, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it on camera or if I'm back here, the etch pattern is broken up by that, by the two different pieces, right, when you go like that. So if you take this and screw it down very tight, you'll line up your etching and everything works out perfect there. Now we'll come back and wake up the board. Now you're not going to hear too much because we didn't put sound venting in, but you can hear it up in person. It gives you those sound cues as to what you're doing. But you can see one side is lit up and so is the other side. So you might hear that blaster deflect, but if I hold the aux down for blade lockup, you'll see it there, and then you'll see it there, right? So we'll turn this guy off and we'll throw some blades in it. I've got one 2-foot blade, and then I've got it like an 18-inch or so test blade. As it turns out, they only fit in a particular way because one of these is the emitter's super tight. It's this guy right here. This emitter right here is super tight, so it fits my small test blade. But then this side fits my other one just fine. Let me take a few minutes and lock these up. So I'm not going to use your, excuse me, I'm not going to use your blade retentions for the purpose of this video. Now on this emitter, the one that comes off, it had a blade retention already, but I had to go in and put an 8/32 set screw in on this guy, so you'd have one on this side as well. And we'll wake the board up, then we'll hit power. And hopefully you can see that. Both sides are lighting up like they should. Come over here and hit auxiliary. You'll get blaster deflects. They will randomize on 2 blades because the board thinks this is one giant blade. So one blade is piggybacking off the other, so you might get blaster deflects over here, or you might get them over here. But when you hit blade lockup, you get them on both sides. And then if you want to change color, we just hold the aux down and twist our wrist. Now you can twist the hilt, and both of these will change identically because, like I said, the board thinks it's one giant blade, right? So you can change, you know, you change in one color, they're both going to be the same color. If we like that, we'll just tap a button. And then when we turn this back on, the blades will be yellow. Just like that. I will come hold the power and turn it off. And we'll take the blades out. We'll start with this one. Take this one out, come over here and take this one out. Super tight, but that's okay. It just holds the blades very well, right? And then to get everything back out, we want to come back over here and unscrew this second emitter, what I like to call the smaller emitter. And remember, you got your chassis sticking out about that far, just enough to come in here with your fingers and pull it out. Just like that. Now, because this chassis is going to have a lot of pushing and pulling to it, here, let me take the battery out real quick. And just come over here by the speaker, which is the positive side, and the battery will pop right out for you. So because this chassis is going to have a lot of pushing and pulling to it, I printed it with a thicker infill, sorry. It's got a thicker infill, that way it can withstand all of the pressure that's going to be put back and forth on it, all right? And then we'll just put it back in the Saber for safekeeping. You don't have to go fast, just go ahead and go nice and slow, let it go all the way in and home in, and then we'll take this emitter and then screw it back on and leave the chassis in there for safekeeping. Anyway, that is your staff. You know, hopefully it came out the way you like. If you got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will catch up about sending this out in the mail. All right, thanks.